Hello, everyone. I hope you're having an awesome time at RETCON so far. Our next panel is titled Getting Deals Done, Tech's Growing Influence on the Capital Stack. Please join me in welcoming our panelists to the virtual stage.
Hello, everybody. I'm Abramson, and thanks for all being part of the virtual RETCON conference today. Again, Abramson, I serve as a VP acquisitions at CRC based in Baltimore, founded in 1960, full service integrated investment firm. We own a portfolio of 10,000 apartment units and retail space throughout the southeast portion of the country and mid-Atlantic as well. And we're investing on behalf of a series of closed-end funds. So our panel session today is entitled Getting Deals Done, Tech's Growing Influence on the Capital Stack. In real estate, deal making has always been personal and relationship based. With recent restrictions on travel, desktop analysis has become even more impactful. So while deal tech is not new to the scene, the process to adapt it has only recently begun to tick up. With tech-forward firms being able to harness disadvantages of deal technology, our discussion today will focus on factors that we should be thinking through while adopting new technologies to get our deals done. To set the stage, I'd like to ask for a brief self-intros from our panelists. And we'll start with Al.
Hello, everyone. Al Pace, co-founder and current vice chairman of Pacific Urban Residential, headquartered in Palo Alto, California, Northern California. 5 offices, dominantly on the West Coast, 1 in New York. We really have 2 lines of business. We operate primarily in what I call the vintage apartment space, meaning older apartment communities or Class B apartment communities. Currently have a $4.5 billion portfolio. And we are also a separate account pension fund manager for one of the largest pension funds in the country.
Dave, over to you.
Hi, everybody. Dave Marcinkowski. I'm one of the partners and founders of Madera Residential down here in Texas. We're in Lubbock, Texas. We have about 15,000 apartment units, mainly DFW and Houston. Our stuff is, we have A, B, and C properties. We cut our teeth mainly in value add stuff and have kind of worked our way up to where we've got a pretty diverse portfolio. We also have a company called Quex, which is a prop tech company that supports our value add side. And I'm looking forward to kind of sharing some of the things we've done differently to bring value to apartments.
Thank you. And Travis.
Thank you, Ari, and good afternoon, everyone. Travis Krueger. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at NorthMarq. NorthMarq is a service provider to the commercial real estate industry. And we have really 3 forms of service that we provide to the industry: placement of debt and equity, loan servicing, and investment sales. Our firm too was founded in the 1960s. Our investment sales business, as we sit here today, really provides service predominantly to the multifamily asset class. On the flip side, our debt and equity placement business really serves the full gamut of assets in our country and utilizes all of the various capital sources open to us in our industry. Altogether, our debt and equity and investment sale platform transacts to the level of about $15 billion annually. Our loan servicing portfolio today is approaching about $65 billion in terms of UPB, and that's represented by about 7,000 loans that we service on behalf of our clients. We're a national company. We've got offices in 40 different locations across the United States, and appreciate being invited and look forward to our discussion here today.
Well, perfect. To set the stage, let's go around the horn and make it more of a interactive conversation. But essentially, what changes have you seen over the past, call it 10 years in technology around real estate investment, specifically in the multifamily space?
I'll go. This is Dave. I think the big thing is pricing. I mean, prices have gone through the roof compared to 10 years ago. I mean, we were buying deals in Dallas, Texas for, $20,000 a door back 10 years ago, probably paying closer to $80,000, $90,000 for that same asset today. And, with price increase, where do you capture that in value? And there isn't this unlimited ceiling in terms of rent growth. And so I think as an operator, you've really got to be thinking through other ways to create value in a property that go beyond just traditional rent growth if you're going to keep up with that kind of price growth.
And so specifically speaking in technology, what can you add to that part of the conversation, Al or Travis?
I'll jump in here. It's interesting, I was thinking about the 10-year framework of the question, and I can say that if I go back further, that my whole career was defined by a technology shift, and that technology shift was really kind of going from manual spreadsheets to VisiCalc, right? And then ultimately to Excel. So, it began to institutionalize, technology began to institutionalize how underwriting for prospective investments took place up until that time. And it still is very much a relationship business, but the underwriting was really varied. The assumptions all over the place, the inputs all over the place, very difficult to go back to the source documents and understand what was really going into the simple math, if you will. If you fast forward to the question, which is really the last 10 years, I think I would have to say that it really kind of started with yield management. Once we saw yield management enter and gain traction, both through YieldStar and LRO, I think that began really, in my mind, the move towards technology in terms of really understanding the asset class on an institutional basis. It really wasn't until 1990 that the institutions started to participate in the multifamily sector at all. I was there at that time. So, and that happened because we were able to start underwriting it on a consistent basis. And then not only were the inputs getting better, but the revenue management was becoming somewhat better as well. So I would say that was really kind of the initial shift. And that goes back a little longer than 10 years, but it took a long time for that to be more widely accepted. And then really the more recent shift, and this is really dramatic, is a multiplicity of technologies, some of which are scalable, some of which in my mind are not scalable. There's a multiplicity of technologies that are being proffered to solve issues within the multifamily industry. Some of them are on target, some of them in my mind are not. But I think that's what we're seeing today. And really trying to digest all of that is a challenge.
That's great perspective, and I'll offer a perspective just from a little different angle, and that is from the service provider. We've got an interesting vantage point being the loan service provider here on this panel. We get to have interactions with owner operators. We get to have interactions with the capital source lenders, and obviously with folks in our service industry. And I can tell you, I think, commercial real estate almost gets a bad rap for its slowness to adopt to technology, especially when you kind of think about this 10-year time horizon, the way Ari framed this question. If you think about 10 years ago, technology in our business, in our industry, we were talking about tech being a fax machine that gave a clear printout. I mean, we had owner operators that were still, even 5 years ago, providing financial statements to us for underwriting purposes with a fax machine. So put that one in perspective. 10 years ago, email that worked consistently was considered technology. Not having a blue screen, the dreaded blue screen, occur during a full day of work was considered technology. And a phone really was something that took a nice picture and could exchange some text between two parties in the form of an email. Really not much by way of consideration for sending robust data, files, etc. So think about that now in terms of today. Clearly, advancements have been made all over the place, infrastructure, devices, everything in between. And now what can you not do on a cell phone? It really is pretty amazing when you think about where we've come over the last 10 years. And, I might add on to it just a bit more that, from a service provider perspective like us, about 50% of our owner operators 10 years ago paid with a check that they sent in mail to make their loan payments. As we sit here today, it's virtually 100% electronic, whether that's ACH, whether that's a self-service model through a website or a portal for our clients. It's completely turned itself on its head. What used to be storage lockers that had to be cooled to maintain servers has become cloud computing, cloud storage. That's made the world a lot more efficient. You can pay for that by the drink, if you will. You don't have to have these archaic ways of trying to store data that don't necessarily fit your business. And there's been a pretty dynamic shift in, you know, CRM systems, customer relationship management systems for sales folks like NorthMarq would have. CRM 10 years ago meant a paper Rolodex that somebody had on their desktop. You know, today that means something quite a bit more robust like Salesforce that integrates into other platforms. So, you know, from the perspective of a service provider, we really have seen meaningful progress over the last 10 years with technology in the commercial real estate industry.
I think that's helpful.
Travis, can I jump into that real quick, Art? Because I think it's important to know. I'm like an operations junkie, so I agree with everything you just said. But the reality is, you know, you hear about Moore's law and technology doubles every 2 years. I'd argue in our space, with the exception of probably the core asset class, technology doubles about every decade. Because a lot of the things that you said and you just described, you do see in our space, but you don't see it universally. You only see it with more sophisticated operators. And we have such a huge swath of different types of groups, from the small mom and pop place up to, you know, the behemoths. And I would argue that it's very small percentage that have really truly taken on technology at a level that's anywhere near where technology could be if we had fully adopted some of the stuff that's out there today.
That's helpful. So let's take it one step and dive in a little more and ask our next question, which is specifically, what types of technologies have been effective in terms of your operations in either loan portfolios, trying to build or trying to acquire or manage, and which of these have been the least effective? Over to you, Dave. We'll start with you.
Sure. I'm going to take probably a different perspective than Al and Travis with this. I'm going to talk about, again, from an operations side. So as we've been looking at deals and trying to figure out different kinds of solutions that can add value to a property, one of the things that we did is we went out and we partnered with Spectrum and DFW, and we brought Wi-Fi and video solutions to our properties. We did 7,200 apartment communities, 7,200 units, 26 apartment communities. We brought 300 megs up and down, 200 plus digital channels. If you move into a Madera property in DFW, you have to also subscribe for our video and internet solution, which was a big risk for us. And we were a little nervous when we started down this path. What we found is that people want convenience. They also want savings. And so think about it. I don't have to go through an application process. It's on the day that I move in. It's on throughout my entire residency. It's a wireless mesh network across the whole property, so I can be at my pool and I can print to my printer in my apartment, and I have 200 digital channels at a cost of $89 a month. So anywhere you go, you Google it right now. What do people pay for broadband and video? And I say that you're going to find somewhere between $150 and $225 per month. We're giving it to them for half the cost in a very convenient solution. And at that $89 price point, there is at least $25 of NOI, net revenue, to the property owner. So you take those same 26 properties, those same 7,200 units, which we started rolling out 2.5 years ago, and every one of those properties have been on it for at least a year. We've increased the cash flow on those properties significantly, but if you put a cap rate, a very conservative cap rate, we increased the value of those properties by over $50 million. By doing that one solution. So that, I would say, has been a huge success. I think the least success side, and this is, you know, I think what we've seen is especially as COVID has come in, the tide has gone out. We're seeing who's wearing swimsuits and who's not wearing swimsuits. And where I think people have been least effective, and now this isn't a knock against your comment about rev management. I think rev management is a big component to how we operate, but we use it. We don't use it anymore, but when we did, it was as a guideline. I think operators who have come to a point where that's it, that's the gospel in terms of pricing, are the ones who are paying a price right now. And it was not COVID ready. They didn't have buttons and dials you could turn as it related to COVID. And so that's been an area that we actually, at the beginning of COVID, made a commitment to move away from revenue management. And I think it's worked out pretty well for us right now, because I think it's relied on us to have to go back to kind of the old school pricing methodology to some degree.
Dave, the $89 for the tech package, is that quoted in effective rent, or is that part of occupancy cost?
That's, well, we're showing it as a technology fee on top of their rent. It's something that comes with their monthly bill that they're paying as a part of their rent. So it's, I guess you'd have to say it's a part of the effective rent for the property if you were to group all those things together. It's been, we've gotten surprisingly little to no kickback on it. And in fact, we look like geniuses going into COVID, because at a time where people were hunkered down in their homes and they needed internet, they needed video, we were able to give them a solution that worked. And we've got videos of residents who, we have one lady in particular who did a testimonial. We weren't even looking for a testimonial on the technology package. We were doing something for the Madera website. And she came on and said, I had to learn the second grade for a second time because I had to be at home with my second grader throughout the second half of school last year. And unfortunately, because I had not returned a box from some time in my past, I couldn't get a solution that provided internet. So I would have had to go out during COVID to find public Wi-Fi in order to be able to do those things with my kid. And here you've brought that solution to me without any of the hassles that go into dealing with a telco company as it relates to offering that solution. So it's an area that I'm kind of now jumping on my soapbox and trying to tell others about. Something we started doing at Quaxt, offering that solution. We partner with Spectrum and Comcast. We've actually got our own Wi-Fi only solution. And we've now got it on over 12,000 or 15,000 units. And we've got another 10,000 units teed up of non-Madera stuff that's in the process of being rolled out.
That's great. I can jump in here, Dave. That's great perspective. Again, I'll answer from the service provider perspective. Again, touching not only the owners but also our lenders and our own folks within our organization. What we found to be most effective are technologies that really promote collaboration. Maybe I'll flip for a second on the technologies that have been the least effective for us. The least effective technology investments that we've made over the last 10 years would be those that would relate to disparate systems. The one-off system that doesn't talk to another system, really that's a thing of the past. And that really, those investments many years ago ended up kind of being dead ends and dead weights, unfortunately. And so the investments that we've made of late really embrace that collaboration. And so I mentioned CRM in my opening remarks. And, to that end, we invested in Salesforce 3-4 years ago. And that really is starting to pay dividends for us. And again, it's one of those systems that really promotes collaboration. And that's not just for our revenue generators and our support staff. That's collaboration between us, our client owners, our lenders, our servicing individuals, trying to create a better experience for our clients. And that's something that's easy to say, not easy to do, and takes time to do. But where we really have invested in technology of late would be those core systems. And so Salesforce on the front end of our house with CRM. And then where we have also invested is on our loan platform. We've gone to a software called Enterprise just recently. And so the concept with us as the service provider is you come up with 2 key pieces of foundation for software. They have to both in their foundational nature be collaborative in nature and offer the ability for us to allow them to interact with one another and then ultimately with our clients and with our lenders. And that's really where we're starting to see some effectiveness in technology, at least as it relates to our service business.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. David, relative to your comments about yield management tools, if you will, I agree with you completely. In fact, I would say we were reluctant adopters early on, particularly when we were in the almost exclusively the disruption part of the business, the value business. Very difficult to make those models work effectively when you're intentionally disrupting the community. As we migrated into longer term holds as now half of our business, separate account business, that became more and more of a tool. But I do agree with you that anytime you have disruption, any significant disruption in the marketplace, and that disruption can be we're obviously going through a very significant period right now, but that disruption could just mean inefficiency in the management as well at a local level, right, at a given property. So you do have to be cautious. And I was really citing yield management as a change that really began to take place on the technology side more than 10 years ago. I find the comments relative to the broader technology agreement with Spectrum interesting, because that's an area that we're really trying to address. And we have a lot of properties in Northern California and the West Coast, and getting consistent delivery of services, and especially based upon the expectations of our residents, can be a bit of a challenge. So I'd love to talk to you more about that. For me, it really comes down, the technologies that are relevant to me are those technologies that drive revenue on the top line and or have a significant impact on the OpEx side. All right, because the CapEx part of it is all dependent on whether or not the CapEx outside of health and safety and deferred maintenance, all that CapEx investment is simply predicated on whether or not it's accretive to the transaction, right? And that's elective. But what I'm really trying to maximize is my top line revenue, and then hit in a scalable way, any of the OpEx side that I can. So on the revenue side, what that really means for us is making sure that our funnel is as wide as it can possibly be, and particularly in the current environment, such that we have as many bidders for any available inventory that we have, as many consumers who are interested in our product as we can get, given a certain amount of inventory that we have available to us. That's what I'm trying to achieve. And so how do you do that in the current environment is different than the environment we were operating in even just a year ago. And so it's exploring all of those technologies, and I don't want to devolve into trite because we're 8 months into this and everyone's been talking about it, but whether it's self-touring, virtual leasing, improved CRM, retention of our residents, all of those tools are not only being visited again, but then you have to kind of identify who are going to be the players long term, right? Because as you sort through all of this, you begin to explore ways not only to increase the funnel, but then potentially to hit the most significant OpEx that we would like to control, and that's the labor component. So I find the whole area of virtual leasing, self-touring, CRM management, engagement with our consumer to be really, really interesting, both because it increases the funnel potentially, but secondarily, it may have an impact on my largest OpEx, which is my labor component. And so those are the areas that I'm most intrigued about. Of course, the downside, David, for all of us is that as soon as we all go in that direction, we're just going to pay the same cap rate on a higher NOI. And so those prices are just going to continue to go up, I guess, right? It's just like management fees coming down. You'd like to think you're getting the benefit of you are getting the benefit of the cash flow, but you're paying a 20x multiple on it. So
I hear you. So it seems to me that the embracing of new tech software solutions is accretive overall. It's accretive in top line in our operating expenses. So the question really is why is the investment community hesitant to adapt these new processes or technologies? And what can advice can you share with others to help them embrace this change?
The same order, you want me to jump in there, or somebody else want to jump in?
Please, go ahead, Dave.
Well, I think anytime there's technology involved, there's always this fear of change and what it's going to take to be able to move away from that. I think my thing that I would tell somebody who has that thought process is frankly, you just got to get over it, because technology is moving whether you like it or not. And if you don't embrace it, you're going to be left behind. And I think we can all find stories from Blockbuster Video all the way through of situations where that's happened. I think our industry as a whole, I want to go back to a little bit of what Al was just talking about. Al, my story with rev management mirrors exactly yours. I mean, we were late adopters. We fought like tooth and nail not to do it. We did it, fell in love with it, kind of learned there were some challenges. And then when the crisis hit, we were like, you know what? I think it's time for us to go back to old school and take what we learned from our rev management days and apply it. And that's just really adapting to that situation. I think we all do. I want, kind of building on both what Al just said, because I think he brought up a really good point, as well as what you're asking, Ari, is we looked at that too. One of the other things that we've built over the last 4 years is we built a digital leasing agent. So we partnered with a group called Soul Machines out of New Zealand, some guys that worked with Peter Jackson on the Hobbit movies. But you can go to any one of the Madeira websites, and in the bottom right-hand corner is going to be Mia. And you can click on Mia, and then this actual digital person comes up. You turn your camera on, your microphone on, and you talk to Mia one-on-one. And she can answer all of your leasing questions, and she can schedule a tour, and she can tell you about availability and rents and show you amenities and tell you our pet policies all the way through. And it's kind of creepy. I mean, it's one of those deals at first you're like, what am I looking at here? But then you're like, oh, wait a minute, this is just like me talking to somebody else. The beauty is she's 24 hours, 7 days a week, bilingual. She can't get COVID. And, during COVID, again, we look kind of like we knew what we were doing when it comes along, because we had this technology that, available to us. We've been kind of showing this off of late, and there's been a lot of demand for it because of what you were saying. And I did an interview recently with a Fox News affiliate out of New York, and the first question they asked me, they all do, is, well, are you trying to eliminate jobs? And my answer was, no, we're not trying to eliminate jobs. What we're trying to do is synthesize predictable, humanize the exceptional. And so what if we could take that part of that, our leasing agent's job, away from them, but now they have the ability to maybe deliver packages, be able to maybe deliver groceries, maybe be able to offer services that we all wish we could offer, but we didn't have the manpower to do it. This offers the ability for us to be able to do that. Or it could be that, now we need to run a 200 unit property with, 2.5 in the office instead of 3. And this gives you the flexibility to do that because we want to underwrite to that. And so, that's the issue with new technology is it's kind of scary, but we have to get over that as a industry, and we have to start to embrace these things in order for us to keep up with these compressed cap rates and these prices going up, I think.
Absolutely, Dave. And I'll just add on there, whether you're a property owner, whether you're running a fund full of real estate investment, whether you're a service provider, one thing is for sure, over the long haul, the commercial real estate industry has pretty good economics. Cash on cash returns are okay, or we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. And you kind of compound that and layer in the fact that change isn't easy. Technology is hard to prove out in certain cases what the cash on cash return is going to be for the significant investment that's involved. Some of them, Dave, are pretty easy to articulate, like the one that you just mentioned in our last question. Not all of them are that easy. And some of them do require a bit of a fail forward type of mentality, and it's okay to try things, invest in things at the appropriate level in order to find something that's workable going forward. And I think, those dynamics from my perspective are what has held back some folks in the investment community to adapt new technologies. But I couldn't agree with you more, Dave. If you don't invest in technology, you are falling behind. That is for sure. And I do kind of like the mindset, and it is a shift in mindset. And we talked about this 10-year time horizon. Well, 10 years ago, if any of us went to the principals of our companies at that point in time and said we needed a multi-million-dollar investment in technology, we would have probably been, run out of the room. It's different today, and we do need to get over it, and we do need to realize that technology is here to stay. Again, in my opening comments, I mentioned, what can we not do with a handheld device these days? And the list isn't very long, and it's getting shorter and shorter. And so, from our perspective, investment in technology is just part of our business dynamic. Being smart about where we invest is obviously something that needs to be a focus, but we have to be in the game for sure.
Yeah.
Real quick, jump in there, Ellen, if you don't mind, jump in there real quick. One thing you said,
sure.
so like one of the metrics we look at is calls missed. You know, we were 40. You can look at Multifamily Insider did it. It's 40% of all calls are missed right now in the office space. Since COVID, that number's gone up to 65%. 65% of all calls into a property office go unanswered. And you know, when you look at technology, it's crazy to think that that's even going on. You know, our example, so ours can answer the phone, it can respond to text and things like that. We're all going to need 24/7 solutions, because the days of people wanting to come in during office hours and actually tour an apartment, you know, they've been dwindling for a while. COVID's going to pretty much taken that away from us. We have to be able to have somebody who can rent an apartment in their living room at 2 o'clock in the morning. All of us need that. Yet, why don't we have that? We have that tech's been around, plenty of that tech's been around for the last decade. And yet, as an industry, you look out at these different solutions, we don't have a lot of it out there. We have to be able to push the envelope now. With that tide going out because of COVID, I think we're going to see a big push towards technology here over the next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I agree with you, David. I come at it a little bit from a different perspective. So my background, way back, was in technology and databases, et cetera. And I think the reason, you know, the question is, why hasn't it been adopted more pervasively and more rapidly, in effect? And the reality is, most real estate people are myopic real estate people, and those are the leaders of these of the publicly traded companies. And I mean that in a positive sense, but we're older. There are a bunch of, excuse my language, old fucks like me who are running these companies and have to drive FFO, et cetera. And I mean that in a truly constructive way. The reality is, you have an accountability to shareholders. You really don't come from a technology arena, and the technology solutions are being advanced up through the chain, through asset managers, portfolio managers, chief technology officer, if you're really lucky and you have one that's really adept. So I think to David's point, everyone recognizes we need it, and the pandemic has really kind of hit that point home, I think. But you have other conflicting accountabilities, and frankly, perhaps not the experience. And the experience you do have is with technologies that have kind of come and gone in some respects. You made the investment and that platform went away. And so I think there's some understandable, natural, inherent caution relative to adopting technology. Now, I agree with the comment that's been made by both David and Travis. We have a bit of a hockey stick that's going to occur, because my son, who works for a publicly traded REIT, is living a very different experience than I did when I came up. So his decisions, as he moves into leadership roles, will be very different than the kinds of decisions that we have made. He is living this world now. He is looking at that 24/7 device, his phone, and he's expecting to have services that will respond effectively immediately. So I think all of that's coming, but it's a transition, because real estate folks are, frankly, real estate folks, not technologists. And that we have a generational change that's also taking place. Okay, I have to make one observation. This is not I think there's a shout out to John Helm and his RETV Ventures Fund. I think he's done a very good job, frankly, of getting the publicly traded companies to invest in technologies and, frankly, sort through and help determine on some level some industry standards. And I think as you see those publicly traded industry holders, institutional holders of real estate move in that direction, you'll see the technology become more rapidly adopted. Right? I think that will happen.
Al, I couldn't agree more. And I'm a huge John Helm fan, and I think we need more John Helms in our industry, and that will definitely push this envelope to where it needs to be.
So on that note specifically, what needs to be done in technology to help improve the customer experience or the investor experience? And feel free to take it one step further and say how to make the in-house colleague of yours experience better with technology as well.
Can you say again, the in-house, what was that again, Ari?
Sure. Either your customers, meaning a resident or investors, or even internally in your process to make your process more efficient and scalable. What needs to be done in technology to help improve that?
I'm going to piggyback again on what Al said and dive into that. So he talks about his son, and there are things that are now becoming expected. There's a generation that's somewhat new. There's a transition going on, but then you have, at the same time, we have this huge generation of folks where things have become the norm. And it's important for us to understand that as we kind of move forward. So a great one I would say would be smart thermostats and locks. The younger people want to be able to open their door with their phone. They want to be able to change their thermostat. They want to be able to save money, energy and money, because they can dial down their thermostat when they're at work and have it turn up while they're on their way home from work. And today that investment is significant especially for a retrofit, because now you got to figure out, okay, what do I got to put into that space? I need a smart thermostat. Today's space, I need a hub. I got to put the hub somewhere where it's not going to get blocked. I need electricity to that hub. I also need, a door lock that, can maybe line up with the door jamb that doesn't necessarily, our kind of properties, the door doesn't always line up exactly with the jamb. So you got to be able to turn the knob and make sure it locks. And where I think, a couple of things about that. One, Ari, I think one of the challenges we run into with technology is it's built by technologists without really that slant around how does it really work in the real world. And as operators, again, I feel like I'm just plugging our products in a way that I am. We went out and we built a smart thermostat specifically for multifamily. And we were able to eliminate the hub. We don't need the hub. We don't need a private Wi-Fi network. We can do it for like $400 compared to double that with these other things. But the beauty of it is because we were operators who kind of worked on this, we understand you need a self-actuating lock. As much as somebody would like to walk up and have their phone wave in front of it and the door just magically open, we don't have the infrastructure to support that. Maybe a new build does until it's no longer a new build. But at the same time, we've got to get more operators into the tech space, teaching, again, like John's great at that. John goes out and he talks to groups. He talks to all the big REITs. What's important to you? He solicits the feedback and he goes and he finds companies that he can then coach and build up to be able to supply real solutions to our industry. But there's too many tech solutions in our space that don't take into consideration the real challenges of us operators.
Yeah, great perspective, Dave. And I think, regardless of who your ultimate stakeholders are, whether you're institutional owners of real estate like Dave and Al, or whether you're in our shoes here in NorthMarq, for us, it's really important to understand what the customer wants, what the stakeholder wants, whether that's a renter, whether that's a client like Dave or Al. We don't want to assume. And so that's part of Dave's point, is that the technologist can't just sit in a room and come up with something that they feel others need. The technologists really need to be integrated into the business. And that's one of the areas of success that we've seen over the last year or two in NorthMarq, is we've actually taken our technology team and integrated it into the business. So they are integrated into the sales individuals that are out talking to the Daves and the Als, and they're understanding exactly what the pain points are with their businesses, where they're focusing their time, and what they'd like to see out of the folks like NorthMarq now and into the future. And so for us, it's engaging those stakeholders. It's asking them specifically, what do you all want that you're not getting today? And even probably taking it a step further. We've begun engaging in focus groups with our clients, and not only asking them the question, what are you not getting that you'd like to get, but giving them a couple of items that they might think about in the form of a menu. If you had this, would that be helpful? If you had this, would it be helpful? And just having that dialogue with them so we can begin the process of understanding exactly what will be important to them in terms of transforming technology together as we move together into the future.
That's great. Let's stay right here. And Travis, so what strategies have you taken to help bring your firm into that new age of technology?
So Ari, first and foremost for us, you need the right talent. And Al made the point just a few minutes ago, real estate folks are not technologists. They're becoming more and more technology oriented, but that is not their bread and butter. That's not the infrastructure of the industry. So we went out and we invested pretty significantly in talent. We went out and again, we're a different organization from what others in the panel and in the audience are reflective of. But we went out, we hired a chief information officer. He went out and put a team around him that also had the right mold of talent that could execute what we wanted in terms of technology strategy. And so first and foremost, you need the right talent, the right people in the right places. And number two, for us, you need a clear vision. You can't just hire a bunch of people, put them in a room, integrate them in the business, say, go get them, without proper direction, without a proper vision. And this for us was quite a process. We actually went out to third parties, interviewed to come up with a strategic third-party relationship in the form of a consulting firm. We ended up landing on one, and it really was a worthwhile investment for us. Again, we didn't have that in-house technology experience. We went out and hired some, but it wasn't exactly the meld for commercial real estate. And so you couple the consultant with the technology minds, and we're really starting to come up with something. The last step of this, from a visioning perspective, is getting your executive team, your board, your key decision makers on board with what you're trying to do. And that can be one of the harder parts of this entire process. Honestly, finding technology talent, yes, it's an investment, but it's fairly easy to find. There's a lot of talent out there. Coming up with a vision, it isn't that difficult. Finding a third-party consultant isn't that difficult, but getting the key decision makers all on the same page, that's not easy. You do have the generational differences in most decision-making bodies, whether you're an owner, whether you're a service company. Ours is no exception. And so getting those decision makers all on the same page, getting their level of understanding of what technology can do for us, was really important for us. And that was a really tough thing to get through. We did, but that took a lot of time and a lot of effort, and I'm glad we did.
Yeah, great comments, Travis. And frankly, I'm reflecting on some of the comments you made and thinking about our own organization. In terms of kind of bringing everyone on board, the comment that you just made, how do you get all the senior folks on board? Because in my shop, my senior folks are my CFO, my chief investment officer, again, very much focused on real estate and debt equity strategies, right? That's where their mindset is. So what we have done, I think I would break it down into really two, maybe three pieces. One, at the most macro level, we do have a venture arm through our holding company, and I'm very active in that arena. So we see a lot of technologies that kind of come in, and to David's point, some of them are solving for problems that are really not there because they don't understand the industry, or they haven't done a good enough job of communicating what the problem is and what their solution set is to me. Or B, they're solving a real issue, but it's not a particularly scalable issue. So one way we get to kind of filter through all of that is through our venture group. We make investments in various technology companies based upon what we believe to be scalable. The 1A on that is I view our portfolio as currency. So if you're a technology firm and you want to participate with Pacific on a to be proven technology, then I want to know what's in it for Pacific. I don't want to be just the units added to your next deck. Okay, I don't want that. I want what's in it for us. So I do view our portfolio as currency and in effect equity, and that's how I approach that side of it. And then at the operational, so this is all about bringing the company into the digital age, right? And so what we did at the operational level was it was really very difficult to get everyone focused on this because everyone's doing what they do. So we did put one individual in charge of all consumer interface. And because I am so focused on our residents, meaning that I'm just trying to maximize the bid for every unit, getting as many people as possible, that means I need to reduce the number of friction points. And so that individual is focused on that piece of our business, right? How do I reduce the friction points? How do I maximize the bid for our units? So again, you put that all together, our interest in technology kind of keeps coming back to that, or as I said, the scalable technologies to reduce labor costs. But that's, and that everyone in our industry and in our company understands because they're beneficiaries.
Wonderful
Travis,
insight.
those are great points. Sorry if I jump in here real quick, Art. I want to kind of give our perspective. Looking at our story and how we got to where we are today. If you haven't noticed, I'm kind of passionate about this topic. I was really excited to be on this panel. There's a lot of things that we've done that I think line up with the conversation. But about 4 years ago, we kind of got disenchanted with the state of technology in our space for a lot of the reasons we just talked about. I think our industry is dominated by 2, 3, 4 large players. The tendency is for the big fish to eat the little fish. And I think the good ideas die when that happens. And so we decided we were going to go off and do our own things. These things we talked about, kind of go with what you said, Travis. We went out and hired an entire executive team from the telco space to come in and help us figure out how to do this Wi-Fi broadband thing. We went out and hired engineers to go and build a smart thermostat. We went out and found partners in groups like Soul Machines who have allowed us to create these digital humans. Take ideas that we felt we needed as operators to be successful, especially as we move into the next decade. And we were able to spend the last 4 years really just ultimately trying to make Madera better. But our feeling is if we make Madera better, we can make other companies better. It's been funny as we've been kind of getting out there. Some people have been looking at us going, why, you're my competitor potentially. Why would I buy anything from you? And it's like, yeah, I get that, but we're also the ones who took the time and the energy who do exactly what you do and said, here's the real challenge. And here's what we think we really need to try to solve. And as we've been starting to talk more and more with folks, the light bulbs go off and they're like, yes, I need something that lines up with how I operate properties. What makes my residents' lives better? What makes my staff's life easier or gives them more time to do other things because I've got a vision for this property that's going to require something different.
Well, guys, I think this has been fantastic. I think the audience will appreciate your insights into the growing influences of technology on operations, capital stack, and how deals are getting done today. So with that, let's pause here.
Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much to all of our wonderful panelists, and thank you, Ari, for moderating. The audience is giving you a big virtual round of applause. We really appreciate you sharing your insights with us today. All right, if you're looking for your next session, take some time to connect with your peers or check out the agenda page to see where you're going next. Also, check out our awesome sponsors in their virtual booths. All right, we'll see you around.